On the surface, it looks like another fight over tariffs. The US say, we are going to charge reciprocal tariff on imported goods. The rest of the world say, fine, we'll do the same to you. It's like a playground fight between the biggest kids in class. But if you stop looking at the headlines and zoom in, you'll see something way more dangerous is happening. This isn't just about tariffs anymore. This is about trust between countries.
This is a very dumb thing to do.
About whether businesses can survive in this tug of war in a world that is suddenly not so open anymore. Today, we are going to peel back the curtain on what's really happening. Why are countries targeting American businesses, not just American goods? How your stock investments are caught in the middle of this silent war? And what all of this means for the future of investing. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the next 4 years could be some of the toughest for global markets and what signs to watch out for so you can protect your portfolio. Stick around because once you see the full picture, you won't look at this tariff war the same way again. Let me take you back to something that most people don't really think about. Every time you hear the stock market is up or the economy is strong, most of the time, they're talking about the S&P 500. It's kind of like the scoreboard for the US economy, a list of the top 500 biggest companies in America, companies that shape what people buy, how they work, how they live. For a long time, the S&P 500 was like a beautiful fruit basket. You had a bit of everything, some banks, some energy, some healthcare, some tech, a little of each to keep it balanced. But slowly, quietly, that basket started to change. As technology started growing faster, as AI became a thing, as the internet reached every corner of our lives, a few companies started to grow and grow and grow. Soon, they aren't just part of the basket, they become the whole basket. That's when people started calling them the Magnificent Seven. These 7 tech giants now make up almost 30% of the S&P 500. Imagine this, you are looking at a team of 500 players, but only 7 are scoring most of the goals. Even if one of them trips, the whole game changes. That's how much power they have. And what makes this even crazier is that these companies don't just run America's economy anymore. They have become global companies. Apple's iPhones are in the hands of kids in Paris, businessmen in Tokyo, and farmers in rural India. Google is used to answer questions in over 100 languages. And Meta connects billions of people every single day. These companies are no longer just American businesses. They are the tools the world uses to live, work, and connect. But here's the danger. You want to hit America where it hurts? You don't need to fire a missile. You just need to make life harder for Apple. Tell Nvidia it cannot sell its chips and say Google has too much power and fine them for it. That is the new battlefield. And the front lines, they are your favorite stocks. Now that we know who's holding the weight of the basket, the rest of the story, it's about how the world is slowly cutting the legs out from under them. When Donald Trump returned to the White House for his second term, he brought with him a very different vision of America's future. It wasn't about building bridges anymore, it's about building walls, sort of like economic barriers. Trump's message was simple: let's bring the jobs back. Let's make America great again. And to do that, he reached for one of the oldest weapons in the book, tariffs. Just like that, he imposed reciprocal tariffs on the world and calls it the Liberation Day for the US. No more trade sweet deals, no more one-sided partnerships. America, he said, was finally standing up for itself. On the surface, it sounded like justice, a tariff that matched what other countries were already charging America. But in reality, this was a blast that shook the entire global economy. It wasn't just a policy, it's a message to the world. You have been depending on America, now it's your turn to pay up. Suddenly, every company that exported goods to the US, electronics, machinery, furniture, food, had to factor in this new tax. Let's say your favorite coffee machine used to be made in Germany and cost $100. Now, thanks to the reciprocal tariff, if it comes back after the temporary pause, it is going to cost way more. And that extra cost you pay doesn't go to the factory. It doesn't help the workers. It just vanishes into government's hands. This is how inflation creeps in. Prices rise, confidence fall, and slowly the wheels of the economy started to grind. And when that happens, US consumers are going to buy less imported goods, which will hurt the world economy. And because of that, the world hits back. One by one, China, Europe, Canada, Mexico, they all imposed their own tariffs. And what we got was a global economy turning against itself. US goods in those countries will also suffer a steep rise in prices. You see, no one's going to win. Everybody loses. After Liberation Day, the world was buzzing.
This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, American history.
Tariffs were flying back and forth. Leaders were giving speeches. Headlines were screaming. But after a few weeks, something strange happened. Things got quiet. The US paused the tariff rollout. In fact, the president even announced some exemptions. It almost felt like maybe the worst was over. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Because while everyone looked at the headlines, something else was already in motion. The retaliation had gone underground. Instead of putting more taxes on each other, countries started doing something much smarter. Let me give you some examples. Let's start with Nvidia. You know the name. It's the king of AI chips, the backbone of everything from smart cars to ChatGPT. Nvidia created a chip called the H2O, specially designed for China, a version that stayed within US export rules. But guess what? The US pulled the plug. The sales of that chip are now blocked. And the worst is when some reports even say Chinese customers didn't get any warning. Nvidia never told them a clampdown was coming. As a result of that, China was furious. And what happens when you block a market like China? They start looking elsewhere, to Huawei, to local chip makers. In trying to hurt China, the US just handed them a reason to build their own tech and hurt Nvidia's future sales at the same time. Then there's Google. In Europe, regulators launched a major lawsuit against Google's ad business. They say Google runs the online ad market like a monopoly, controlling who sees what and how much everyone pays. In another case, even the US itself is suing Google, saying its power is hurting competition. And sure, these cases have been brewing for a while, but the timing is just too perfect. In the middle of a global trade standoff, the world suddenly decides to go after the core of American tech. Coincidence? Maybe, but it sure feels like strategy. And it's not just Nvidia or Google, where I have more examples for you. Apple faced pressure in China when state agencies told employees not to use iPhones at work. Tesla, under investigation in multiple countries over data, safety, and subsidies. Amazon is being hit with antitrust probes over how it treats sellers. One by one, these companies, the same Magnificent Seven we talk about, are being pulled into a new kind of battle. This is no longer about tax on goods. This is a battle of influence of who controls technology, of who sets the rules of global trade. It's like watching a chess game, but instead of knights and queens, we are moving around billion-dollar companies. As a result, it hurts investor confidence. You see, what you are seeing now is retaliation without the press conference. No missiles, no shouting, just red tapes, just delays, just business made harder. And this is just the beginning. At the business level, they are really lost. They don't know where to invest. CEOs don't know how to plan. Shareholders, like you and me, we become nervous about the sustainability of business they are in. This nervousness is what causes the market to fall sharply in recent months. While I've been painting a gloomy picture over here, we have seen this before and perhaps history could teach us a lesson or two on how we could anticipate what's going to happen next. Back during Donald Trump's first term, he did something similar. He launched a trade war with China, slapped heavy tariffs on billions worth of goods. The idea was very simple, make it more expensive to rely on China so that companies would come home. But that's not what happened. Instead of rushing back to America, companies went elsewhere. They went to Vietnam. Vietnam quietly became one of the biggest winners of that trade war. From textiles to electronics to furniture, factories started popping up like mushrooms after the raid. Big companies like Samsung, Nike, and even Apple suppliers started building or expanding operation there. So while the US and China were busy throwing punches, Vietnam grew quietly, steadily, and fast. In fact, during Trump's first term, Vietnam's exports to the US grew by over 35%. And now, here we are again, a second Trump term, a new version of the tariff war, more uncertainty. And the same old question, where will companies go now? If China becomes too risky, if the US becomes too expensive, where is the next Vietnam? Some say India, some say Indonesia, maybe even Malaysia. But one thing's for sure, the minute global businesses feel pressure, they diversify. They spread their risk around the world. This is what's happening now. CEOs aren't waiting for war to break out. They are already adjusting, planning their next move. So, after all the tariffs, retaliation, attacks on businesses, what's next? The truth is, we don't know if the reciprocal tariff will ever actually come back after the 90-day pause. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. What we do know is that the damage has already been done, not just to trade deals or profit margins, but to trust. And when trust breaks, everything slows down. Markets might stay shaky, valuation could stay under pressure, and businesses will spend more time figuring out how to protect themselves and how to grow. But here's the thing, nothing is forever. The world changes, leaders come and go, policies shift, and history has shown us that the companies who survive are the ones that adapt. As an investor, there's no need to panic. Stay calm when you read those headlines and look for companies that are flexible and forward-thinking. When investing, remember this, money is never just about numbers, it's about knowing the story behind them. If you like this video, check out the previous one where I talk about how China uses US Treasury as a weapon against the US. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and see you in my next one.